AITA. My unemployed boyfriend is trying to destroy my life. We live in my apartment and he said we need to move in with his friend because my apartment is too small for him. I never thought I would be in this situation. If you had asked me 2 years ago where I saw myself in a relationship, I would have probably said something like, in a loving, healthy partnership where we support each other and grow together. But now, I feel like I am trapped in something I never signed up for, something that keeps draining me every single day, and I do not know how much longer I can keep doing this. When my boyfriend and I first got together, everything felt perfect. It was one of those relationships that started off so strong, so full of passion and excitement, that I genuinely thought I had found the person I was meant to be with. He made such a big effort to be with me that I felt like the luckiest woman alive. He even moved to my home country to be with me. At the time, I thought it was such a romantic gesture, that he was showing me just how serious he was about us. I felt special, I felt chosen. But now I feel like I was just being set up for something I never agreed to. Things started shifting when he began pressuring me to let him move into my apartment. It was not a conversation where we both sat down and discussed it like two mature adults. No, it was him constantly bringing it up, saying that it made no sense for us to be apart when we could be together all the time. I told him, over and over, that I was not ready for that yet. I love my space. I love my independence. I work long, exhausting hours, sometimes 50 to 60 hours a week, and when I come home, I need peace. I need time to recharge. But he did not care. He would keep pushing, saying that couples who truly love each other should want to live together, that I was being distant, that I was acting like I did not want to commit. And when I kept resisting, he started threatening to break up with me. It was always framed in this dramatic way, like, if you really loved me, this wouldn't even be an issue. Maybe we just are not right for each other if you do not want to take the next step. At that point, I was already emotionally exhausted from having the same argument over and over again, so I gave in. I told myself that maybe I was being too rigid, maybe I needed to compromise. I let him move in. And that is when everything really started falling apart. For the past year, he has been unemployed. He always talks about getting a job. He tells me his plans, his ideas, how he just needs to find something he is passionate about. But he never follows through. He sits around all day while I go to work, and when I come home, the apartment is exactly the way I left it, sometimes even worse. Dishes in the sink, laundry piling up, things out of place. He does not contribute financially. He does not help with the rent, the bills, or even groceries. I pay for everything, and whenever I bring it up, he acts like I am being unfair. He tells me he is trying, that it is not easy, that I do not understand how hard it is for him to find something that he actually wants to do. But at the same time, he has all the time in the world to go out with his friends, to go on vacations with them, to spend nights drinking and having fun while I come home exhausted, knowing I have to do it all again tomorrow. When I try to talk to him about how this is making me feel, about how I am overwhelmed and tired of carrying all the weight in this relationship, he never actually listens. Instead, he immediately turns it into an attack on me. He starts listing all the things he hates about me, all the ways I am apparently failing as a girlfriend. If I tell him that I do not feel supported, he tells me I am not supportive enough of his struggles. If I say that I need him to step up, he tells me that I do not appreciate everything he does for me, which, honestly, I cannot even figure out what that is at this point. And when I try to stand my ground, he gives me the silent treatment. He will ignore me completely until I eventually stop trying to have the conversation. Then, once enough time has passed, he suddenly acts like nothing happened. He apologizes, says he will change, that he knows he was wrong, that he loves me and does not want to lose me. But nothing ever changes. It always happens again, and every time it does, the things he says to me get more hurtful, more personal, more exhausting. And then there is the issue of my apartment. He constantly complains about it. He says it is too small for him, that he feels cramped, that he cannot relax in a space that does not feel like his. But instead of finding his own place, instead of suggesting we find something together when we are both ready, his solution is for us to move in with his best friend. He is so set on this idea that he will not let it go. He wants me to leave my apartment, the place I worked hard for, the place I feel comfortable in, just to accommodate him. And I do not want to do it. I have made it clear that I do not want to do it. But just like with everything else, he does not care about what I want. He only cares about what he wants, and if I do not comply, he makes me feel like I am the problem. The worst part? He constantly tells me that I do not spend enough time with him, that my job takes up too much of my life, that he feels neglected. But when I do have time off, when I actually have a day where I can relax, he is nowhere to be found. He is out with his friends, doing whatever he wants, while I sit at home, drained, wondering why I am even trying so hard to make this work. I feel like I am constantly running on empty. I feel like nothing I do is ever good enough for him. And I feel like I am in a relationship where I am the only one actually putting in the effort. At this point, I do not even know if this is worth saving anymore. I love him. Or at least, I loved the version of him I first fell for. But that version of him is gone. And I do not know if I can keep sacrificing myself for someone who does not seem to care about how much he is hurting me. I do not know if anyone else has been in a situation like this, but if you have, how did you handle it? Because I am reaching my breaking point, and I do not know what to do anymore. Update 1. After writing my first post, I realized that I could no longer live in such tension. Every day felt like I was carrying a weight that was only getting heavier, and no matter how much I tried to push through it, I was slowly being crushed. I needed space, clarity, a moment to breathe without feeling like I was drowning in my own home. So I did something I had not done in a long time. I took time off work. A few days, just to clear my head, to be alone with my thoughts, to figure out what the hell I was still doing in this situation. But, of course, nothing ever went as planned. The first day of my break, I told him I had a long shift, even though I was actually planning to stay home, sleep in, relax, and think. But when he left in the morning, I realized I couldn't relax at all. My body was still tense, my mind still racing, the familiar anxiety creeping up my spine like it always did. Even with a rare moment of peace, I could not shake the feeling that something was deeply, deeply wrong. Then came the evening. I had spent most of the day outside, trying to clear my mind, walking aimlessly through the city, debating with myself about what to do next. I was exhausted when I came home, ready to just take a long bath and shut out the world for a little while. But as soon as I walked into the apartment, I felt that something was off. It was quiet, too quiet. And then I heard it. His voice. At first, I thought he was just on a call like usual, talking loudly and carelessly like he always did. But something about the way he spoke made me stop in my tracks. It was hushed, like he didn't want anyone to hear. And then I heard my name. I knew I shouldn't have been listening. I told myself to walk away, to not become that kind of person. But the moment I heard the words, "keep her for at least a few more months," my entire body went cold. Keep me? For what? My mind raced as I stood there, frozen in place, straining to hear more. The conversation was about money. It was about some kind of agreement that I didn't understand, something I had never even considered. And the way he spoke, it wasn't desperation, it wasn't like he was struggling to make ends meet or trying to figure out a way to help our situation. No, it was calculated. Cold. It was like he was talking about a business deal, not a relationship. By the time he walked out of the bathroom, my heart was pounding so hard I thought he would hear it. I asked him what that call was about, my voice steady even though my entire body felt like it was shaking. He immediately went on the defensive, telling me I was paranoid, that I was exhausting, that I needed to see someone for my trust issues. But his face told me everything I needed to know. He was lying. And he knew that I knew. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed the conversation in my head, the words twisting into something worse every time I thought about them. I had to know. I had to understand what was really happening. I had never gone through his things before. It wasn't something I believed in, and despite everything, I had always held on to the idea that even if he wasn't treating me right, he wouldn't actually betray me in a way that went beyond emotional neglect and manipulation. But something about this, something about that phone call, pushed me past the point of caring about morals. I waited until he was asleep. Then, heart pounding in my ears, I carefully searched through his bag. I expected to find nothing. I told myself that I was probably overreacting, that I was reading too much into things. But then I saw it. Elise, not in his name, not in my name, but in the name of another woman. For a long moment, I just stared at it, unable to process what I was seeing. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was for a friend. Maybe it was something unrelated. Maybe it wasn't what I thought. But then my eyes moved to the payment records. Paid monthly. Paid with the money I had been giving him. The money I transferred to him every month for important expenses. The apartment was rented with my money, the money I transferred to him every month for important expenses. Update 2. I did not confront him right away. The weight of what I had discovered was too heavy, too suffocating, and I needed to process it before I did anything rash. My hands had been shaking when I put the lease back into his bag, my breath shallow and uneven as I slipped back into bed beside him. Lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, I realized that this was the moment everything changed. There was no going back from this. I had spent months making excuses for him, convincing myself that his behavior was just immaturity, laziness, and inability to handle responsibility. But this? This was calculated. This was cruel. I needed confirmation. Cold, undeniable proof. Because if I confronted him now, he would twist my words, gaslight me, turn it around until I was the one apologizing. I knew him well enough to expect that. So instead of acting impulsively, I waited until morning. I got up, made coffee like nothing had happened, let him leave the apartment like it was any other day. And then I picked up my phone and dialed the number listed on the lease. The landlord answered on the second ring. I kept my voice light, casual, the perfect balance of curiosity and politeness. I told him I was looking for a place to rent and had come across his listing. I asked if it was still available, if he could tell me about the living conditions, the area, the pricing. He was friendly, open, willing to share details. And then he told me that the apartment had already been rented. That a woman had signed the lease and had been living there for a while. That she had a boyfriend staying with her. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. My stomach twisted violently, a sharp, sickening knot forming in my gut. My mind fought against the words, but I knew what they meant. He had been living a double life. Not just cheating, not just lying. He had been staying in my apartment, eating my food, spending my money, all while maintaining a second home with another woman. And I had been working overtime, exhausting myself, stressing over bills while he used my hard-earned money to support whatever life he had built with her. I thanked the landlord and ended the call. My hands were ice cold, my entire body buzzing with adrenaline. I sat there for a long time, staring at the phone in my lap, feeling like I was outside of my own body. The sheer audacity of it all was almost laughable. He had done this while making me feel guilty for not spending enough time with him. He had pressured me into letting him live with me, made me feel like I was the bad partner, the one who was unwilling to compromise. And all this time, he had another place. Another woman. Another life. That night, I waited for him. I cooked dinner, set the table, played the role of the doting girlfriend one last time. I needed him to feel comfortable, to believe that everything was normal. I needed him to let his guard down. And when he finally did, when I saw the tension leave his shoulders, when he took that first bite of food and let out a content sigh, I looked at him and said, "I know about her." The change in his expression was instant. His fork clattered against the plate, his whole body tensing, his eyes widening just for a fraction of a second before he forced his face into something neutral. He tried to play dumb, acted as though he had no idea what I was talking about, but I saw the panic flicker behind his gaze. Then, as expected, the anger came. He accused me of invading his privacy, of making things up, of being obsessed with trying to find problems where there were none. He called me paranoid, unstable, said I needed professional help. But I did not react the way he expected me to. I just sat there, watching him, silent, unmoving. And that was when he knew. Something shifted in him. It was subtle at first, the way his shoulders slumped slightly, the way his fingers twitched like he wanted to grab something but did not know what. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. And then, without another word, he stood up. I watched as he grabbed his jacket. I watched as he slipped his shoes on, his movements quick, frantic, as if he was afraid that if he stayed a moment longer, he would be forced to face whatever mess he had created. He did not yell, did not try to argue, did not even attempt to justify himself. He just left. He did not take his things, did not try to justify himself. Just left. Update 3. A few weeks passed. The first few days after he left felt surreal, like I had suddenly woken up from a long, exhausting nightmare but hadn't quite adjusted to reality yet. The apartment was quiet, unnaturally so. No passive-aggressive sighs, no unwanted background noise from his aimless conversations, no clutter left behind for me to clean up. His things were still where he had left them, untouched, a silent reminder of everything I had endured. His jacket still hung by the door, his shoes sat neatly where he always kicked them off, his favorite coffee mug sat empty on the kitchen counter. It was as if he had just stepped out for a moment, as if he might return at any second, but I knew deep down that he never would. And yet, for days, I hesitated to touch anything. It was not out of longing, not out of sadness, but because I needed to fully absorb the fact that he was truly gone. The silence was overwhelming at first. I was so used to existing in a constant state of tension, waiting for the next argument, the next demand, the next impossible expectation to be placed on my shoulders. It was strange, almost unsettling, to suddenly have nothing to anticipate, nothing to brace myself for. The absence of conflict left a void, but soon, I realized that void was not something to fear. It was something I had been desperately needing. What had first felt like an eerie quiet soon became comforting. Peaceful. I could breathe again without feeling like I was inhaling secondhand resentment. At first, I half expected him to show up, to demand explanations, to try to twist the story around like he always did. He had never been one to let go easily. He had always relied on his ability to manipulate, to wear me down until I stopped fighting back. I thought, for sure, he would come back with some grand gesture, some excuse, some desperate attempt to regain control over me. But nothing happened. No phone calls, no unexpected knocks on my door, no long-winded speeches about how I had misunderstood him. He simply vanished, and for a while, I did not know whether that made it easier or harder. I spent those weeks rebuilding the life I had almost lost. Piece by piece, I reclaimed everything he had taken from me. I threw away the weight of his presence, both physically and emotionally. His things went into bags, every item that once belonged to him serving as a bitter reminder of the lies, the manipulation, the exhaustion. The act of removing them was cathartic, each discarded object making space for something lighter, something better. I came home after work without the burden of someone else's expectations hanging over me. I could sleep without being woken up by unnecessary noise or selfish demands. I could buy things for myself without feeling the familiar guilt of knowing that my money was going towards supporting someone who refused to contribute. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Then, a few weeks later, I heard about him. Mutual acquaintances, people who had always been more his friends than mine, started talking. They were careful at first, hesitant, unsure if I even wanted to know what had become of him. But I listened. Not because I missed him, not because I cared, but because I wanted to understand just how far he had fallen. He had gone straight to her. The woman whose name was on the lease, the one he had been playing house with behind my back. I suppose he thought he could seamlessly transition into a new life, slipping effortlessly from one woman's generosity to another's. He must have believed that she, like me, would be patient, understanding, willing to carry his weight without complaint. He must have thought that his charm would be enough, that his empty promises would work on her the way they had worked on me. But it did not last long. She caught on faster than I had. She realized within weeks what had taken me months to fully grasp, that he was an Alphonse, a parasite, a man who attached himself to women and drained them for everything they had. And she did not tolerate it. She kicked him out, and she did not do it gently. There was no negotiation, no second chances, no endless cycle of apologies followed by repeated betrayals. She did what I should have done long ago, she shut him out completely. With nowhere to go, he bounced between friends, relying on whatever scraps of goodwill he could still milk from people who had once thought he was worth keeping around. But friendship only stretches so far when someone is a leech. He had nothing to offer, no job, no stability, no plan. Just empty promises and tired excuses. At first, his friends took pity on him, offering him a couch to sleep on here and there, feeding him when he had nowhere else to go. But he was never the type to appreciate generosity. He had never learned to be grateful. He took and took and took, giving nothing in return, and one by one, his friends started to turn away. I can only imagine the moment it finally hit him, the realization that he had burned every bridge, that he had exhausted every resource, that the life he had built on lies and manipulation had collapsed around him. The arrogance he once carried, the entitlement, the belief that he could float through life without responsibility or consequence, all of it must have crumbled the first time he was told no. Meanwhile, I was healing. Slowly, carefully, deliberately. It was not easy, but it was worth it. The damage he had done had left scars, but they were beginning to fade. I found myself again in small, simple moments, morning coffee in absolute silence, the joy of buying something for myself without guilt, the deep satisfaction of knowing that every cent I earned was mine alone. The weight on my chest, the ever-present anxiety, the constant self-doubt that had followed me for so long, it was all beginning to disappear. I stopped feeling the need to check my phone every few minutes, waiting for an apology that would never come. I stopped second-guessing my own anger, wondering if I had overreacted. I stopped mourning a relationship that had never really been what I thought it was. And the biggest revelation? I did not miss him. Not even a little. What I had been clinging to was not love. It was nostalgia. It was the memory of the person he had pretended to be in the beginning, not the reality of who he truly was. Then, just a few days ago, the most ironic thing happened. He wrote to me. The message was pathetic. Full of self-pity, empty words, desperate attempts to pull me back into the cycle he had spun so many times before. He told me he realized what he had done, that he had made a mistake, that he still loved me. He begged me for another chance, as if everything he had put me through could be erased with a few hastily typed sentences. I read the message once. Then I deleted it. The end of this story is simple. I will not let anyone use me again.